All right. What is up, everybody? Welcome back for another episode of the Fit 40 podcast. Today, we got Tyson Robertson on the show. He is a personal trainer instructor for Show Up Fitness, and he has one amazing origin story that has led him on the path towards learning as much as he can as far as mobility, personal training, and just feeling as best as he possibly can and helping his clients to the best of his ability. So, Tyson, cannot wait to pick your brain. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. This is fun. I'm looking forward to talking with like-minded people and another trainer yourself. So look forward to it.
Hell yeah. Now, fair warning, everybody, we might nerd out a little bit, but that's okay. We're going to have fun doing it. So don't feel like this isn't going to be like applicable to you, because we are going to make sure that pretty much everything we cover is going to help you get stronger, help you get fitter, and you're going to feel like $1,000,000 by the end of it if you follow Tyson's words of wisdom. So before we get into that, I'd love to know where you started, because I know you told me about like your intro to getting stronger, getting more mobile. And I'd love for you to share that with the listeners.
Sure. Yes. Growing up, loved sports, was always into sports, how I could make myself better. I was kind of the late bloomer growing up, always a little bit chubby and a little bit behind. And so I was like, you know what, I need to do something to make sure that I can catch up with everybody else. And so, strength training and weightlifting was something that I picked up at a young age. And it really helped me out a lot, because by the time I was a junior, senior in high school, I was able to really excel in the sports in basketball and baseball. And then, went to college, went down a route that I didn't really like. I pursued something that I thought that I wanted to do, but didn't really. I went to the chemistry subject. And it was one of those things where you get out of college, you try to find a job, you start a family, and then before you know it, life happens. You're like, okay, what now? And I was about 25 pounds overweight. Decided I'm going to get in shape. What's the best way that I know how? And that's go play some basketball. Well, the second time I did that, I tore my Achilles. And so that was a hurdle that was something that changed my whole life. My son was about a year and a half at the time. My wife was about 3 weeks away from giving birth to our third child. And so when that happened, it was a whole new thing. And if anybody knows about an Achilles tear, it's something that takes a long time to repair. And so long story short, went into that, went back to work. I developed pain in the other side and went through about 4 or 5 years in the Western medical establishment, going to foot doctors, trying to figure out what would help. They'd give me orthotics. Nothing worked. And so I was like, you know what? I think I should probably actually strength train and work on mobility. Got into yoga, started strength training, started really listening to podcasts like yours and trying to figure out like what's the best way that I can fix this. And finally, over time, I was able to alleviate the pain, and I had an opportunity in 2021 when we moved, sold our house, new spaces, new places, new people, and had a little bit of money. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to invest in training and try and help others. And so that's kind of a short story of how it started and how I developed this passion I've been doing for about 3 years, and I love every minute of it.
That's awesome. And it almost feeds into the stereotype of like, if you're a personal trainer or a physical therapist, it's like, so tell me about your injury that led you down this path.
Exactly. Yeah. I talk with so many people like that. It's always something that they had to overcome, and they just want to show people that you can come back from it. Because that was me for a moment. I didn't think I would ever come back from it, but you can't. I mean, it's tough and it can be hard, but a lot of times you can come back.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting you bring up the foot thing, because I myself had issues too. Like I had plantar fasciitis as like a mid-20s kid. I'm like, this is wrong. This should not be happening. And then went down the path of like barefoot shoes and like understanding anatomy of the foot a little bit better. And it's like, okay, obviously orthotics and stuff will alleviate the pain, but it won't fix anything. So then you get into the stuff that actually works long term, and you're just like, this is pretty nice.
Yep. It's almost like fixing the symptom instead of fixing the root cause. Once you figure out what that root cause is and you can fix it, then I think that's kind of the goal of a trainer, is to help people find their actual root cause, because they might be dealing with the symptoms of why they're struggling with either weight loss or pain or just whatever their goal might be. So really listening and trying to figure out what the person wants and fixing that root cause is huge. And that's something that helped me out a lot.
Exactly. And I think we're in a unique position as trainers, as coaches, where it's like we work with a population that actually wants to do something about it. Cause like as the fiance of a medical doctor, I totally get like their main people don't want to do anything. They don't want to be bothered. They're just like, give me a pill, give me an orthotic, call it a day. But luckily we get these people that are so motivated to change their lives. It's like, okay, let's do this thing. So if somebody's in that position like right now and they're like starting to come back from an injury and they want to get back into fitness, what are some like couple of things that you would tell somebody? I know it's like a super vague question, but like, is there any sort of like checklist you would say, I would take care of X, Y, and Z? Well, like to get off on the right foot. See what I did there?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I would say, if you're coming back from injury, it's really important, I think, to find a good physical therapist. I mean, therapists are like trainers. You have good ones, you have ones maybe not so good, but finding one that you trust or maybe that has, some good recommendations behind is really important, because if you don't fix that injury, you're just going to be fighting an uphill battle. So I think starting there, and then take it slow, give yourself grace. I think people, they want things so quickly. They want that pill, they want that thing to fix whatever the ailment is so fast that they just give up. And so I think it's really important just to stick with it, go slow, try and learn the best you can. There's so much information on there. So I give it up for people who try, because it's hard, because there's so much information out there on social media and stuff like that. So finding that person you trust, finding the establishment you trust is huge, because that can really send you down the right path instead of trying to figure out like what I'm doing here, what I'm doing there. And so finding somebody you trust is really important, I think.
Yeah, it is such a
And go
gift.
slow.
It is such a gift to have access to quality people on your healthcare team, like physical therapists, like doctors, and whatever, as long as they're all good and they're all on the same page, right?
100%. Yeah. Yeah. And that's why, like with Show Up Fitness, the company that I'm teaching anatomy for right now, they really express to new trainers, learn your anatomy so that you can go talk that language with physical therapists, and then you can really take care of your client. Because there's been multiple times where I've had a client come into the gym and they're limping, and I look at them, I'm like, so what happened to you? And they're moving something, or they're playing a sport, weekend warrior, and they tweak something or they hurt something. Well, I wouldn't feel comfortable just sending them off to anybody. So I want to make sure that I have those relationships with other physical therapists. And so that's one thing that in my short career I've tried to foster, is just relationships with therapists who I trust, so I can send people and really take care of the client. Because there's times where you will, even myself, a couple months ago, I partially tore my calf playing basketball, and just being able to ask questions to therapists, man, it's helped out a lot. So finding that person you trust is huge. I can't recommend it enough.
Absolutely, because if we can speak that same language, it's a cheat code. And I really think that's the real value when it comes to certifications and things, because a lot of young trainers, young coaches get like really full of themselves a little bit, and they're like, "Oh, I took this certification, which means I know everything about this subject." It's like, no, now you can just hold a conversation with an expert.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we talk about at Show Up Fitness, is those certifications. Like, how much value are those certifications actually giving to the person? Like, if you have those questions, do you have someone that you can ask? And that's something I'm proud to be a part of this organization, because you can actually help. If I don't know the question, I can help. I can ask one of the other trainers who've maybe been in the program a little bit longer. I can ask Chris Hitchko, who runs the company, who helps new trainers out. And it's just such a great feeling to be able to be like, you know what, I don't know, but I will get that answer for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of Show Up Fitness, I mean, every time Phil brings it up, every time I see media, I'm just like, damn, this is something I wish I had when I was first starting personal training. Because it's like a lot of people don't realize, a lot of personal training certifications out there are run by like VC firms that are just trying to make a whole lot of money and teach you next to nothing. So in the same breath, like if somebody was like, okay, I want to get a personal trainer because I want to do this right, what are some things that you guys teach that are like easy ways to be like, okay, this trainer knows his shit or her shit?
Yeah, first off, see if the trainer walks the walk. If they're working out and doing their thing too. I mean, unfortunately, it is a superficial industry. A lot of times you look at someone, you don't necessarily go by what they say, you go by their fruits. So if the person looks like they can move good, like they can push some weight, well, obviously they're doing it too. And what I like to recommend for trainers is always do a movement before you have a client do it. But as far as the other side, if you're looking for a personal trainer, you want to make sure that they smell good right off the bat. And I would say that you have a good connection with that. Like, you can have a discussion with, because you're spending a lot of time with this person. If you don't get along with them or you don't vibe, and not that that's bad, if you don't vibe with them, then it's not going to be worth the investment for you to put in that time, because eventually it'll get stale, and then you'll probably dread going to the gym. And you don't want that. You want to go to the gym excited to get in there and get out feeling better. And then other than that, I would say, maybe do your own research, even if you don't know like specific movement patterns or muscles. Ask the questions and see how they answer, and then ask somebody else if they understand that. So you kind of quizzing the trainer a little bit, see if they do understand their anatomy and whatnot. Because sometimes trainers just have people doing random stuff on Bosu balls. And the quick story about a Bosu ball: when I first started at the YMCA, there was an elderly lady, and one of the trainers had the lady standing on the Bosu ball, holding some dumbbells and then pressing overhead. And I was watching it out of the corner of my eye because I had a client in front of me. And I was like, okay, this could put, I was thinking, what's the end game here? Final destination, right? And so I was looking over there, and she went up and she started to go back. And I was about ready to run over there, but luckily there was actually another person walking by that was there to catch her as she was starting to go back. I mean, she may have planted and been fine, but it's one of those things where, like, what's the risk reward? So I would say another thing, and Chris from Show Up always rails on this: if you're doing a lot of things on Bosu balls and that's your main training aspect, that's a red flag too.
Yeah. And I'll throw a cherry on top is if you watch people, like if you're in a commercial gym setting and they're working with the person and they smile, that's always a really good thing too, because chances are they're going to pass the beer test, which is, would I actually go out and have a beer with this person? Because if you're going to spend an hour together, like you said, you got to kind of enjoy their company a little bit.
Yeah, 100%. I think sometimes trainers, we get in this mentality like we may know it all, or these people, why don't they understand? Why can't they just do the movement? And we have to have a little bit of grace, and we've got to smile and be okay with these people coming in asking for our knowledge. It's our job to communicate how to do these things. And if people are starting from square one, it's tough. I mean, learning the skill of lifting is tough. It's taken lots of years for me to get where I'm at, and probably for you to get where you're at. So, have a little bit of grace and take your time and definitely smile.
And at the end of the day, like if somebody's form is perfect and they know what to do, why the hell are they going to hire you? Like,
Yeah.
kind of defeats the purpose. But yeah, no, I love all of that stuff. And I know people listening right now are probably going to go into their gym with like a checklist of like, okay, Tyson said this. All right, this guy looks pretty solid, or this lady. Now, let's talk about stuff that's like, okay, maybe they're not going the personal training route, but they want to start incorporating things to help themselves. And I love getting on the topic of like asymmetries, because I know Phil gave me a little piece of information that you have one arm that's a little bit shorter than the other.
Oh, I shared that with you? Yeah. Yeah.
So
I'm a little off kilter.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about asymmetries, because for some odd reason, and I did it as a young trainer too, it's like, God forbid we're asymmetrical. Like, oh, the world's going to end. Like, what is the whole fear around that? And is it legitimate?
For sure. And I would say this is one thing that actually led me down this road. But I've noticed, and you probably noticed too, that almost everybody is asymmetrical. It has one side that takes over for the other. So it's actually more normal, from what I've seen, to have people be asymmetrical than not. So that being said, yeah, so I broke my shoulder when I was a kid in a four-wheeling accident, hit the ground, broke the head of the humerus. And at the time, I didn't think anything of it, was in a sling for a while, got that puppy off, went back to just normal life. But then one day I was a junior in high school and I went to touch the rim. I could touch it with the left, but not with the right. And I was like, okay, that's really weird. What's going on here? And then I put my hands out and I was like, okay. And there's about a 2-inch difference between the two, and it's mainly all in the humerus. So I was like, okay. And I thought back, I was like, well, it must have been from the broken shoulder. That's the only thing I can think of. And then as I got into college and was lifting, I noticed like barbell bench press would always hurt my left elbow. And then eventually I get frustrated and I was like, you know what? I don't even know how to lift anymore because I'm in pain all the time. And that's kind of where I led down the stage of like getting out of the weight room and gaining that 20, 30 pounds because I was frustrated. At that time I probably should have went to like a trusted physical therapist or a personal trainer who could help me work on those asymmetries. But at the time I just gave up. And but it's helped me to understand that everyone's dealing with something. It's just what's the recipe for success when it comes to that.
Exactly. I know I've had clients tell me, like, I know you probably have too, where like they'll press one dumbbell up and they'll be like, why can I do like 8 on this side, but only like 3 on this side? You're like, hey, the goal is to, if we can, get that difference as close as possible. But at the end of the day, we're all a degree of asymmetrical. Like, let's not overthink it too much.
Don't worry about it too much. Especially most people that I train are just trying to feel better, get out of pain, have more energy, and be able to keep doing the things that they like to do in their life. And it doesn't mean that they necessarily have the same press the same with like the left arm as the right. So yeah, but they will say that. They'll be like, what's the deal? I don't understand why.
Yeah. And I really think unless you're like really dead set on barbell movements, it's like it's really like nothing. You could eventually, like with dumbbells, level it out over the years.
Yeah, there's always a way around it. There's always a way around it. You can always find a way to program for your person so that they don't have to necessarily use the barbells or put yourself in situations where those asymmetries could cause the pain like it was causing for me. Like if I would have went back in time, I'd been okay. Well, I'm gonna do dumbbells. But all my buddies were over there bench press, and I thought I had to hang out with them, you know. And if I couldn't do it, I was just gonna quit.
Yep.
So that's kind of how it went down.
Yep. Exactly. It's like when everybody's benching, it's like you can't say no.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah. And speaking of anatomy, because like this, I figure this will be a nice little transition into it. Is there anything that you catch yourself really talking about a lot with clients where it just happens to come up, whether it be the hips, the lower back, the shoulders?
Sure, yeah. When it comes to anatomy, I'm always kind of throwing out the anatomy thing, and I'll find out real fast if the client is just like whatever, like let's talk about
Just tell
something
me what
else.
to
But
do.
yeah, just tell me what to do. And you know, I got to throw it out there once because I love anatomy. I geek out on the human body, and if they're willing to interact with me, I'll try and teach them a little bit because it can help. Because like if they're doing a certain movement, I want them to focus on a certain muscle group. If they know kind of where that's at, then they'll be able to kind of pinpoint how they're supposed to move. So I always try and throw it out there. It doesn't matter really what it is. I'm really big on mobility drills, like in between lifts and stuff like that. So when we're talking about that, I usually tell people like, okay, well, this is your glute med, working this movement right here. This is your hip flexor. And you know, for the majority, I'd say like 90% of them, they'll come back and they'll be like, oh yeah, my hip flexor feels kind of off today. Let's do something to work on that. And that's like, okay, light bulb, this is great. Now we have something we can talk about. So I try and bring them into the anatomy world, but if their eyes glaze over, I'm like, okay.
Well, it's kind of like speaking the same language, how we were talking about with the certifications and stuff. Like when a client learns that's what this muscle is, it's like if it's tweaked, you could be like, hey, I tweaked that thing you told me about the other week. And now we understand and we could cater your program so much better.
100%. It really helps the communication process because they'll focus more on things that they're doing away from the gym. Because I mean, you're only in the gym, you know, a small percentage of their actual like workload throughout the week. So we only have so much time to kind of relay the message on how to get over the knee pain or whatever it is, or strengthen this certain area that we want. So if they can speak that and they can understand and put that two and two together, it really helps me as a trainer.
Absolutely. Now, I love that you brought up mobility drills. And are there any specific ones that you catch yourself leaning on a little bit more, especially for the type of person that say is at like a desk job where they're that sedentary lifestyle and they're probably stuck in a specific position all day? Is there anything that comes to mind that you catch yourself programming a lot?
For sure, yeah. I would say that stretching those hip flexors, like I mentioned previously, is something that's really huge because we're sitting all the time, so those hip flexors are always shortened. Couch stretches, hip flexor stretches. A lot of times we're kind of in that forward roll position, you know, on a computer, we're in a car, we're sitting in our chair. So a lot of thoracic extension stuff, you know, rotations. I mean, there's so many that I do and I like to mix it up just to keep it fresh, but those are some of the things that I notice that most of my clients deal with are those real tight hip flexors and just kind of forward shoulder.
Yeah. Now, if anybody listening is like, okay, I want to do these, what are they? Just look up, if you YouTube couch stretch or half kneel stretch, it's going to come up. And then if you Google or YouTube T-spine rotation or extension, you're going to find a bunch of different exercises to do, especially if you come across my YouTube. I know I've got a bunch on there. So give them a try. And honestly, I mean, if it feels good, chances are it's probably doing something good.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And then, you know, just to piggyback off that, if you are out there working on your mobility, once you feel like you're getting a little more mobile, then think about strengthening that position. And this is more trainer talk, so you might have to have someone explain how to strengthen that specific movement or that area. But if you can strengthen it, then you will be less stiff and less prone to get back into those fixed positions in the future. So I'm big on, you know, stretch and strengthen, stretch and strengthen.
I am so glad you brought that up because in my notes right here, I have something straight from your media that said, get long, get strong. Can you explain that a little bit for somebody who's like, what the hell is that?
Yeah. So I mean, so when I first started getting out of pain was when I got into yoga. And this is way before my training experience. This is before I started doing the deep dive into strength training. But I just wanted some relief with my joint pain. And so I tried hot yoga, and it was something that really helped me out. And if you think about it, if you get into those end range positions, that muscle is stretched out as far as it can, without pain. So get long just means like strengthen out, get tall, whatever position you're working in, just stretch out as far as you can to that. You want a little bit of pain, but you don't want to obviously hurt
Yeah,
yourself.
like
But I think sometimes,
discomfort, not pain, really. Like where it's
yeah,
like you're on the edge, but you're not pushing it.
100%. And I think a lot of times, we're always told like get out of discomfort, get out of discomfort, but actually pushing towards discomfort helps you with the pain in the future. So get long, get strong just means like taking yourself to end range motion, even if it's not that fancy or doesn't look that good. You will add ranges of motion. You will start.
Yeah. And on that note, what is your opinion on flex spine and loading that? So for like anybody who's
Love it
wondering, that's like basically the touch your toes position because people think you bend your back while you lift, you're going to blow out a disc.
for sure. Yeah, I'm big. So I would say that I'm more pro movement than anti movement. I don't like to scare my clients, and I think it's always what the appropriate load is, because your spine does flex, your spine does extend. Okay, well, to what effect can it do that, and how much can you load? So as a trainer, I'm always looking at that and trying to figure out how much can we load to do that. But I'm never afraid of putting the body in all those different positions. Like so if you look up a Jefferson curl, that's where you have a rounded spine and you're doing like a deadlift. I love programming those for people, but I'm not having them do a ton of weight. I'm actually doing it without any weight just to see if they can get in that position first without pain, right? So flex spine is fine. It's not something I do all the time, but I'm definitely not afraid of getting people in those positions because I think the stronger we are in all positions, the better we'll move and the better we'll feel.
Yeah, I think that's the direction a lot of our industry is going, that everybody's going to start to see in the years to come, is not fearing these positions that for the longest time, everybody in like the 80s and the early 90s, early thousands, the bodybuilders are like, bro, you're going to hurt yourself doing that.
Yeah, and I think that's because there's an inappropriate load going on with that stuff. I mean, when you're trying to max out all the time, yeah, you are going to increase your risk of hurting your back if it's flexed. But if you find the appropriate load and you're working within the right movement pattern, I think you'll be fine.
Yeah. And on that same note, like if somebody doesn't necessarily want to increase their muscle mass or something, like they're just like, I want to feel better. Like what are some metrics to gauge that'll be like, okay, you're making progress, or maybe you got to change things up rather than just how many reps are you doing, how much weight are you doing?
Sure, I like to check in right away, like right when they first walk in. How you feeling today? How we doing? How was rest? How was sleep? How was water? Because a lot of these things, it's multifactorial, right? Like you could be getting into the gym, lifting weights, working hard, but if you're not sleeping, you're not hydrated, you could come back pretty sore and you think that you may have taken a step backwards, but it's really your just recovery might be taking a little bit longer. So the first thing I like to do is ask, how are you feeling today? How are we doing? And if we're struggling, I like to take it slow with the mobility and the warm up and then slowly load as we go. But it's all about how you move. So when we come in, when we start doing our drills to get warmed up, if we're feeling good, we'll only take a couple minutes. We'll get right into the lift because we don't want to waste any time. But if we are struggling, we'll take a little extra time to get the body ready because we might need it, and go from there. So that first hey, how you doing is huge.
Definitely. And it honestly makes me think a little bit of like, I remember seeing like Charlie Weingroff talking on this, because I know everybody seems to have an opinion on FMS, whether it's good, bad, indifferent, whatever. But Charlie brought up a good point. He's like, honestly, one of the best uses is like take it in the beginning of a session. And then at the end of the session, if none of the metrics improve, chances are the program's not that good. But if they do improve, chances are it's a good program because we're increasing mobility and coordination. So it's like, we just need some way to understand, okay, this is actually beneficial rather than we're just spinning our wheels.
Yeah, that's great. And I would say do that on any movement, like even the couch stretch. Try it when you first walk in. You're probably not going to be able to get very far. Go work out, come back, do it again. You'll be surprised how surprised the client is with how much better they can get into the position. So I think retesting movement patterns and stuff like that is really important to test that out and see how they're doing. Opens up the light bulb goes off with the client, like, oh, okay, I am getting better, and then they'll want to come back in the next time, and that's what you want. You want them feeling better when they leave. but you want them itching to come back for sure.
Exactly. And then, like you said, if you want to mix it up, like doing mobility drills in between exercises, like you could gauge it that way where it's like, okay, this first set of reverse lunges, I felt it in that back leg because for some odd reason, that's always the spot people tend to feel it. But then you throw in some couch stretches while you're resting for a minute, like 2 minutes. And then that couch stretch stretches something out. And the next set feels incredible. No back pain or back leg pain whatsoever. And you're like, this is working.
Yeah, and that's where the pro movement comes in. And speaking of that, earlier today I had someone, we were doing some Aussie rows, which is just a row pattern, horizontal row pattern. And she was complaining about a little bit of pain in the upper trap on one side. We went over, we did a little bit of foam roll, a little bit of mobility drills just to get into protraction, retraction. This is where the anatomy comes in.
Yeah.
Protraction, retraction.
Yeah, protraction, people, is like reaching forward. Retraction is when you're pulling back, just so we're all on the same page.
There you go. Yep. Yeah, external rotation, internal rotation, blah, blah, blah. And got back into it and felt great. You know, that's where it's good to have a trainer because they can get you into position to succeed. Whereas like maybe if you went into the gym, you're like, I just don't have it today, and then you quit, and then well, there goes that. You know, there goes the opportunity to improve that day.
Yeah. And I know we've covered a lot of things that should get done and like benefits of a personal trainer for sure. Because I mean, there's no better way to start a fitness journey than to have a professional say, you are best suited to do this, this, and this. And that's a great way to get started. But let's say somebody's like super, like not about it. Like, what do most people get wrong when they first go to the gym? Like that you notice that you almost have to teach them to unlearn those things when they start with you.
Yeah, I think one thing that I noticed the most when I worked in the big box at the Y is that people who have been there maybe for a while, they don't have the right intensity. So it's almost like they're spinning their wheels. I mean, you know, any movement is better than no movement. So don't get me wrong. It's not like you're wasting your time. But if you could just find the ability to increase your intensity a little bit, you could make so many more gains, and you could actually do it in a shorter amount of time. You could be a little more efficient with how you do it. And that's something that I've learned with myself, just training myself, is that I can get that intensity pretty high because I understand the form of stuff. I can get that intensity pretty high, and I don't have to spend like an hour and a half, 2 hours in the gym every single day to get the results that I want. You know what I mean?
And when we say intensity, just so again, we're on the same page, we're talking relative to like 1 rep max, right? Where it's like we're driving the weight up to the appropriate point, not, oh, I'm just making everybody get super sweaty and like be dead by the end of the session.
Yeah, no, I would say like reps in reserve. Like how many reps could you do to finish this set? And I see a lot of people, they'll do their set of 10 because that's the number we all want to choose, right? And they're done, and they could have potentially done 6, 7, 8 more reps at that weight. And at that point, it's like you really left a lot on the table. You really could have gained a lot more just from maybe upping the weight a little bit and pushing yourself a little bit harder.
Yeah. My personal favorite when I was in like the small group training setting was when like a mom in her 50s or 60s would come in and be like, yeah, I've usually just used like the 10, 20 pounders. And then we have her lift like a 50 or 60 pound kettlebell before she leaves. And she's like, that wasn't that heavy. And it's like, yeah, you were picking up a toddler until he was like 40, 50 pounds. You have this strength.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that was kind of marketed towards women to lift light and just move. And I think the good thing about the fitness industry right now is we're promoting lifting a little bit heavier. But then, you know, you do have the opposite side of the spectrum where people are going so heavy that they really put themselves at risk for injury.
Yep, absolutely. It's like the sweet spot's always in the middle. You never want to like push the RPMs to the point where you're in the red, and you don't want it so low that the engine doesn't even look like it's on.
And I think that's the thing to look at when you're a beginner is try and find that sweet spot and be okay with understanding that might take a little bit of time. And that's perfectly fine. Just learn the skill of it. Think of it as a skill instead of a workout, like you're going to the work. Think of it like you're building the skill, you're learning how to move. And then once you get the skill, then you can start upping the intensity little by little until you find that sweet spot.
Absolutely. And in that same breath, when it comes to the intensity, are there any other concepts that you think people need to start embracing a little bit more, like maybe unlearning old things or embracing some new things that people haven't heard about yet? Does anything come to mind for you?
Yeah, I think always being open to learning new movement patterns. You know, some people can get stuck on the bench and the squat, and that's all they do, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think opening your mind that there's so many possibilities out there that you can switch it up and keep it fresh. sometimes you go into the gym, you don't want to go, you just do it because you want to check that box. And it becomes kind of a frustrating thing. It becomes more like work instead of enjoying yourself. So I think opening, broadening your horizons as far as learning new movements, like with different lifts, like kettlebells, dumbbells, bands, different mobility drills. If you can spice it up, I think it just creates a better environment for wanting to come back and learn more and keep on growing as growing your skills in the gym.
Yeah, and I love that because I mean, what's the number? It's like every person usually knows like something like 10 exercises and then that's it when there's like hundreds out there. And especially when it comes to the different modalities. I know I had like Logan Dubé on here and we rocked it about kettlebells. Like, what are some of your favorite exercises with those different modalities that you think like, man, everybody needs to experience this at least like once?
Kettlebell swing is huge. Kettlebell swing really changed the way I look at lifting and just explosiveness, because a lot of people go and they want to lift heavy, low reps, and just being able to move a kettlebell, it's a different feeling. And I have that inner athlete inside, so I want to be able to move well too. I don't necessarily care how much I'm benching. I want to be able to move well. I want to be able to run when I want to. I want to be able to throw my kids up in the air, which I can't really anymore because the oldest is 8 now. So that's becoming a thing of the past.
Turkish get up.
But
They just set the
nonetheless,
world record. You could go for it.
oh, see, I need to learn something new.
Yep.
Yep, exactly. So, I mean, the kettlebell swing and the kettlebell windmill, I don't know if you want to explain maybe the windmill, but that really helped me because of my asymmetries.
Yeah, I mean, the windmill is awesome. And if you ever want to feel like, holy crap, I have no mobility whatsoever, it's one of those where, I mean, basically you're
Yes,
standing with your legs like in a V and you're holding the kettlebell up to the sky as you try and touch the ground with your other hand. Like you're kind of going in that windmill position. Again, people YouTube this stuff, it'll do way better of a job than me trying to explain it.
and that movement really opened my eyes to how I was so far off on one side compared to the other. My short arm side, my hip mobility was way less, and that was the side that I tore the Achilles on. So that side was just a little bit tighter in general and shorter. So if you think about it that way, tighter and shorter, like this side's compensating for the other. Learning that windmill just opened my eyes. Like, okay, I'm really weak in this position, so this is what I need to work on. So it really opened my eyes to actually what I needed to work on instead of just going in and working out per se.
Yeah.
But yeah, kettlebell swings are great. I love learning new kettlebell movements. Just be careful when you start. I've nicked a couple off my knee before. It doesn't feel good, but it's really fun because when I was about 32 years old is when my wife got me my first kettlebell, and it was at the time where I was working a lot of hours. I had an hour long commute, and I'd work 10-hour shifts. And the wife didn't really want me to go to the gym after work, right? I need to come
She's like,
home.
come
So
on.
kettlebell was,
Really?
yeah, like come on. Yeah. So anyway, I was like, yeah, well, fair enough. So I was like, I need to be home. Well, what's a way that I can still train at home? And once I got my hands on that kettlebell, it really changed things for me because I could do all kinds of different movements and still stay strong and I actually noticed that I actually got more mobile because of it.
Yeah. And another underrated thing that I didn't really think about until I think I heard maybe Luca Hosver say it once. He's like, you can crush it on kettlebell stuff, but your body doesn't feel beat up because it's really hard to use a very little amount of weight. So that like, I guess, load on your CNS is nowhere near like lifting 400 pounds off the ground.
Yes, you feel so much lighter when moving a kettlebell. I agree 100%.
Yeah. And another thing too is like you kind of get that like they call it quote unquote functional strength, which we could debate that all day, what that actually means. But it's like you kind of feel better doing basic stuff like lifting your kids, like moving around, because you kind of have to coordinate everything rather than just isolate one movement.
Exactly. Yeah, using your whole body to move the weight, and you got to balance it. Like if you snatch it, which means you put the kettlebell overhead. You got to balance one side. You got to use the other side to keep yourself standing straight up. So yeah, I love them. They're actually my favorite tool still. I'm always throwing in kettlebells. I still lift the barbells, still use the machines, but kettlebells is what I like to do just to try and stay limber and stay light.
Absolutely. And as we're saying this, it actually happened maybe like a week or two ago. For anybody who's familiar with every goddamn Dre, he's one of the big kettlebell guys. Now he's on Peloton. So if you guys have Peloton, go check his kettlebell program out. If not, he's got a bunch of really good stuff too. And do you know of any other good kettlebell people? Because it's kind of like they're like diamonds in the rough. Like they're not super popular, but when you find a good one, they're always awesome.
So one guy that pops up right off the bat, I'm not sure if you ever heard of the Crazy Trainer.
No, see, this is why I ask.
So the Crazy Trainer, he does more of the juggling and stuff like that, and the stuff that he does with the amount of weights that he does just boggles my mind. So if you ever want to see some crazy kettlebell juggling, go check out Crazy Trainer. It's great.
All right,
it's amazing.
I'm gonna earn it this podcast episode, editing it up, putting all these names in here. It's okay, though. I'll do it for you guys. So if you're listening right now, just know it's going to be in the show notes in the description wherever you're watching or listening for sure. So you guys can get some good workouts and know that they're like properly made.
Exactly. And then I don't know if you ever heard of Pavel Tsatsouline, but he's kind of the guy that brought
OG.
Kettlebells. The OG, yep, exactly. He's great too. And then Mike Salemi is one other, Salemi. I'm not really sure if he is doing much on social media or what he's doing now, but he's kind of the guy that got me started on it to begin with, to learn like the proper technique of a kettlebell swing, because it's a pretty technical move.
Yeah, and pretty much any strong first, because I think all those guys were RKC at first, which is like the Russian Kettlebell Committee, which is basically what Pavel came from, right? RKC?
Yeah. Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, so if you want like very like beginner stuff that'll work it up and like you could take it from there, Strong First is a really good resource too.
Yeah, and I think they run some kettlebell certifications throughout the country. I'm not sure how many they do each year, but I know they run some kettlebell certifications. So I got my eyes on them. I wouldn't mind learning, like officially learning the certification with that. And I think, who is it? I think it's Clifton Harsky is just one other name that pops up.
Yeah, he's a PPSC guy, and he's their kettlebell guru over there.
Yep, him and John Russin. So yeah, there's some good resources out there if you want to learn how to use it. But I can't recommend it enough for, especially if you want to do something that's outside of the gym. They're so easy to just put it in the house, and you can start small. I mean, they go down to 5-10 pounds. You can start small if you want to.
Absolutely, the 5-10 pounders, you could literally get them at like Walmart, or I saw some actually decent ones at Marshall's. I'm like, they have kettlebells. This is great.
Expanding their game.
Expanding it. Yep. I know Jordan Sayat did a video the other day, and he's like, I'm in Walmart right now, and they legitimately have like really good gym equipment in here now. Like you could get a really good at-home gym for under $1,000 just by going down this one aisle.
Boom. Yeah, couldn't get that in the 90s.
No,
for sure.
No, you'd have to see whose like dad used to be in the military that's like doesn't want to use his weights anymore and they're rusted over. You're like, can I have those? But
yep, the old garage gyms.
Exactly.
Yep.
But that brings me to the final thing I wanted to touch on, which is like the at-home style of doing things, because I know a lot of parents just don't have the time. And kettlebells can be an incredible option because, like you said, you could do it at home, especially if the significant other, your spouse, wants you at home. But what are some like good at-home pieces of equipment that, let's say you're not working with a client, but you want them to still get some good work in without you? What would you like them to have?
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of resistance bands because just like a kettlebell, you can put those, you can tie those up anywhere. You can do rows, you can do presses, you can do all that stuff with bands, and it just helps your mobility. Like I want, like if I'm working with, it also depends on how often I'm working with them each week. Like if I'm working with them 3 or 4 times a week, like I just mainly want them to probably do some mobility stuff at home. But if I'm only with them once a week, I think bands are great, but just some dumbbells that you could use that you could hold on to, increase the intensity of your squat, stuff like that. But really, knowing those body weight movements are huge. But bands and kettlebells and some lighter dumbbells are some of the things that I think are the easiest to get your hands on. And, you can use them in multiple different ways.
Absolutely. Those are, I mean, that's like the top of the top. Like if you want a good at-home gym, get yourself some good bands, some good dumbbells, and you are set.
Yeah, you'll be good to go. And the nice thing about it is if you get your first set of dumbbells, test it out, see how it goes. If it's becoming too easy, just go get another, go grab another set. Like you said, Walmart aisle 29 has plenty choices.
Oh yeah. They had, I think when I was watching that video, I think they had dumbbells up to like 100. I'm like, holy crap. Like this is nuts.
Can you imagine someone trying to carry that out of there?
Hey, they're saving on shipping. We know that's the real killer when you buy these damn weights is the shipping.
Yes. 100%.
And your UPS guy hates you for life, so there's that. But
yeah, your UPS guy's probably not coming back.
No.
You gotta deal with that.
As a son of a UPS driver, I can tell you they will hate you. But No, but I'm glad we touched on all these topics because I know a lot of people are going to listen and pick up a thing or two that could be an absolute game changer, especially the whole idea of strong and long and like making these little tiny tweaks to their program. Probably going to make a world of difference. So, Tyson, thank you so much for popping on and sharing your wisdom. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, Brian, this was great. This is great to get on here and talk with the like-minded individual, fellow trainer yourself, and hopefully we can talk in the future, my man. Thank you.
Absolutely. Now, before you go, real quick, if anybody heard you and was like, damn, Tyson knows his stuff, I want to follow along, and I know he has a damn good Instagram, so I can vouch people, where can they find you?
Yeah, so my Instagram handle is just Tyrex Training. It's just Tyrex Training. And just the story behind that, Ty, obviously my name, but the T Rex was a joke in college because of the short arm. So I just went with that name, and that's why it stuck.
Love it. Love it. Well, I'll be sure to put that down in the show notes in the description so you guys don't have to go searching for it. Just click away, give Tyson a follow, and we will both be very appreciative if you could go ahead and share this episode as well to somebody who definitely needs it. Somebody who is locked in into their program, always getting hurt, or they just never get their butt to the gym. Send this their way. Say, Brian and Tyson say hi, and we know they're going to appreciate it. So thank you guys for tuning in all the way through. Until next time, I'll see you later. But until then, go kick some ass. Bye bye.